My name is Brandon. For all of you that don't know, I run The Meet. I have the pleasure of working with Scott Zellner at King Motorsports to bring this event to life. Each of these three gentlemen have worked extremely hard in their profession. Obviously, street racing, media marketing, and King Motorsports, right? Distribution. Go ahead. But let's begin. I wanted to introduce each panelist. First up, we have a legend in the import scene, someone who's been shaping car culture for decades through film, media, and industry innovation. Please give a warm welcome to RJ de Vera. Our next guest is a true street racing icon whose passion and builds have inspired enthusiasts for generations, including his legendary Mugen CRX. Give it up for Junior Asprer.
Hello, hello, hello.
And last but not least, the reason why we're all here, the man behind King Motorsports, the official U.S. distributor for Mugen, a cornerstone of the Honda and Mugen legacy here in America. Let's welcome Scott Zellner.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for coming out, everybody.
Whoa, whoa. All righty, let's begin. So, Junior, as you sit next to your CRX, I have a question about your early passion for Hondas. You've been a part of the Honda scene since the beginning. What first got you into building and modifying Hondas, and what kept the passion alive all these years?
I would say 89, early 89 years, attending the street races in Gardena. It was the first time I ever saw a bunch of imports lined up in a random street. And you could basically visualize and think of the street that we came up today with cars parked across each other and hoods popped up to people random looking at each other's cars. And the only difference is that you have people street racing up and down the street, burnouts on one end, and just what you see in the meets today, where just it's a random gathering of individuals. That night was it for me. That was like the turning point where you saw a bunch of imports, predominantly rear-wheel drive cars from Toyota Corollas, Celicas, Supras, Datsun 510s, Zs, Mazda R100s, 2s, 3s, 4s, and a few domestics, but it was only a handful of front-wheel drive Hondas. It wasn't even popular back then. So that particular night was basically what kickstarted it for me. And it was soon after that, I found myself purchasing all the Mugen parts available, and believe it or not, it was through King Motorsport, through Scott. And
now you're dating yourself, man.
Now you ruined my thought. Shoot. Well, what is I saying now?
We started to buy all the parts in Scott.
Yeah, so that's where it all began for me. The passion. Actually, the passion is I would say is due to the culture, because I was there from the beginning, nearly 4 decades of it, and watching it grow and innovate through community has exponentially have grown to what it is today. And the culture and the innovation of it, I mean, I was there for, when, for example, street racing, we start off with 8-inch slicks to all the way up to all-wheel drive cars now. And from going a measly 100 horsepower to, 2,000 now, and running 13 seconds to now high sixes. And the culture has evolved dramatically, if you really think about it, and the growth of what it is today. And I would say, even with media, how popular it's been. I've been there when Super Street was all print media to what it is now. It's on the digital era. And one thing is consistent, though, throughout those whole entire years is that we've never continued, we never stopped evolving and just building as a community. So for me, what passion has allowed me to have that passion was because it never left. The purpose was always there.
Now, Scott, you've been involved in motorsports for decades, and your racing history helped shape King Motorsports to what it is today. Can you share how those early experiences on the track influenced the direction and the philosophy of King Motorsports as a company?
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks everyone for coming out. It's great to see you, and it's all these impressive Mugen builds are just awesome. It's like a scrapbook of my whole professional career, seeing all these cars and seeing these parts that we sold and seeing generations now of people who are into these cars. It's so cool to see a father brings a catalog that I wrote back in 1988 with his son, and they're still with that same car that they've had all these years. So I owe my whole career to all you people out here that have supported us. It's been a long, crazy, career. It's changed a million different ways, but the core of the career is for us as a company has always been circuit racing. So I started out in 1984 as an autocrosser racing my Civic 1200. I graduated then to circuit racing in 1986. I bought a Civic 1200 race car that was okay and started to build it up, and I won my first championship that year. And through that championship, I gained a little bit of notoriety in the community, and I was asked to come to Milwaukee and start this new business called King Motorsports. And the focus of that business was to be the Mugen distributor for the United States and to talk to all these racers about these parts that really no one really had seen before. No one really understood what a plate-style limited slip was like before. So it was our job, and why Mugen chose us is we were racers. We were in the scene. If someone called us up after getting this part, we could walk them through what they're seeing and what they should be feeling. And that was super important to Mugen to build their brand in the United States, other than to just shove it out the door and have everybody figure it out. So in a sense, we were brought on board to educate the public, and that's something that we've been doing since 1988, and we continue to do today. If you call us, you'll probably get me on the phone, and I'll walk you through how to put a front lip spoiler on your car, or if you've got a problem with a fuel system on an 87 Civic, I can walk you through that too. And it's the continuity of having that knowledge base that I think is super valuable, and I just enjoy sharing it with everybody here and to the whole community.
Thank you, Scott. That's awesome. Now, RJ, you've had a long, multifaceted journey in car culture, from importing parts, selling from your mom's condo, magazine editing, consulting for the Fast and the Furious, to leadership at Meguiar's, 3M, and now SEMA. How did your early exposure to brands like Mugen influence the way you think about performance, styling, and brand authenticity?
Well, Scott probably doesn't remember this, but I probably called him like 50 times in my early days of wanting to modify and import, just to find out about Mugen and the stuff that he was selling and how long it would really take to get and all of those things, even though I couldn't afford it. So thank you for putting up with me. I think like most of us, the things that inspire us are the things that excite us. And growing up watching this guy actually break records, it only made me want to modify my own car in my own way, whether it was to show it or to race it. Never as fast as this guy, unfortunately. But yeah, I think all those things that excite us are the things that inspire us, right? So I don't know if Junior did this, but there were no magazines. There was no Super Street. The only magazine you could buy was the Japanese magazine Option. So you go to the Japanese market and you'd learn all the characters for what Civic was or CRX or Integra. And you try to find out all the parts that were getting sold, whether it was a Mugen part or some other brand. And it was really exciting. It's different now, like how people get their information, how most of the kids get their information. there's so much more access now, which is good and bad, right? But back then you really had to search for it. And so, the catalogs, like some of the stuff that Scott's giving out today, that you held on to that. It was like, oh my God, and you looked at it all the time. And if anyone's from the 90s, you probably did this. You would cut out the wheels, and then you would lower the car. And you were like, ooh, that looks good lowered, right? Like people were like, what do you think of the Prelude, RJ? I'm like, we got to slam it on wheels first. And then I can give you an opinion, right? And back then, you literally took the catalog and you cut it out and you lowered it like, yeah, GSR looks pretty good. So I think those are the things that inspire us. I think it's finding the things that excite us and then really digging in and embracing it. I mean, all of these builds are examples of people who are very meticulous and OCD, and it takes a time to find parts, right? There's a couple cars, probably years and years to find the parts, and because a lot of stuff isn't made anymore. Although Scott will re-release some stuff. I don't know what he's re-releasing soon. But I think that's the joy of this culture and this passion that we all share, that we all love, and events like this help kind of keep that going.
Awesome. Yeah. I'm young, so being able to see these catalogs and stuff that, Scott has shown me, it really brings what vision to life, especially with these builds. I wasn't around to see these guys in action, doing what they do, but being able to do an event and have these guys come out, it really speaks volume in terms of how these guys really care about their vehicles and how they care about the community. So it's awesome to be able to get all these guys out and display their builds, have a great time and enjoy themselves. So speaking of your Mugen CRX, Junior, it's one of the most iconic builds ever made, in my opinion. What makes this car so special to you personally, and what do you think it represents for the community?
I think I'm going to answer that together because the truth of the matter is when building this car, to me, it was going to be a statement piece, more of a conversational piece for everybody, people to reminisce on and look back on why we fell in love with Honda to begin with. And I can remember being a kid and going to the Honda dealer and finding these two cars on the face of the first Mugen catalog. So that to me was the purpose of this car, to allow people to know the history, to look back on it, and this is why we fell in love with Honda. And building this car, it actually introduced what we call today's JDM, is these kanji letters, to me, was the first introduction to the Japanese Honda tuning world. That's what it was for me. And so just like you avid sneakerheads, per se, you revere the Jordan 1. But for you to appreciate the 2s, 3s, 4s, and 5s, and so forth, you got to know where it all began. So putting this together is just that. It's just a Jordan 1.
So poetic.
Right. So poetic.
Very, very
super inspiring. But there is a build in the other showroom. If you guys got a chance to check it out, it's pretty cool. It's RJ's S2000. It uses some of the most rare and high-quality Mugen pieces, wheels, wing, carbon fiber roof, etc. What parts of the build were most important to you personally, beyond visual appeal, and what performance or emotional value do they bring to you?
That's a great question. The roof, which I had a long conversation with Scott with because I thought it got discontinued. And he's like, where'd you hear that from? I'm like, I bought the car partly to get this roof, Scott. Can I still get one? He's like, don't worry, you'll get one. No, the car itself, I have a very special relationship with the S2000. I had the one 20 years ago, which ended up in the Fast and Furious movie. Black with red. Mine's is black with red, so it's very serendipitous. When this one came to my life, I'm like, okay, I guess this is the one I'm going to get. Which turned pink for the second movie, which now sits at the Peterson. So the S2 for me was the car that I didn't have for a long time, but was like a very big part of my life. And so when it came time to do something analog again, it just made sense to get that car. And when I was young, even though I bugged Scott a lot to try to get Mugen parts, I didn't have very much of it. I couldn't really afford that level. And so this was an opportunity to kind of relive my youth and get that's a pretty dope skyline, by the way. And to get these parts that I've always kind of wanted. I had a few things when I was young, but never to the extent that I have now. I mean, the roof is a third of the price of the car, just about. So you gotta make a little bit more bread to afford it, and it took a while, right? So I think that car to me is very special because of the history that particular model has in my career and what it stands for. But when I bought it, I didn't want to redo the car that I had 20 years ago. And I wanted to build it with parts that I could get today. And it's almost like if Fast and Furious was coming out now, how would I build that car? Which is very different to what it was in number 1 and number 2. So yeah, it's a special car. I mean, I hope to keep it. Scott sold his and then bought it back. So I learned a lesson there because I might not be able to buy it back. So hopefully I'll never sell it.
Oh, man, what an awesome S2000. Thank you for sharing and bringing it out. Now, Scott, obviously, all these builds being here in this building, I got to ask you a question. What is your most memorable build being, the Mugen guy in the United States? What is your favorite build that you've seen over the past couple years?
Builds that we've done or customer builds?
Customer builds.
Customer builds, these two right here are my two favorite. Because this is where we started. This is the where the foundation was made for our business, is selling parts for these cars. And the CF48s, which were 13-inch back in the day, we sold a ton of those wheels because there was nothing else out there that fit these cars. Headers, exhaust systems, the rear spoiler on this car, we sold a ton of those things, and it really put us on the map. And people got to experience these Mugen things. And back then, the industry was just being born, and parts didn't really fit great. I mean, we kind of had to muscle things in there. But the Mugen parts, it was a revelation because everything bolted on and did exactly what it was supposed to do. So it raised the bar from what was going on in the United States exponentially. And these two cars are where it all started for us.
Awesome. Yeah, it is an honor to be sitting in between these two cars, hearing stories about them and getting to see them in person. It definitely excites me as someone who's young. The direction of where cars are going, I like to look at these builds, right? Builds that were built in a different era, more than social media and, online, all the online stuff. Speaking of which, so you've lived through every phase of the Honda scene, up to date, from underground street racing to full-on show and track builds. For younger builders growing up in today's social media-driven culture, what's your biggest piece of advice on staying true to the roots while still moving the culture forward?
Making you think there, man. Making me think.
Sorry, man.
Well, the Honda community has always been about individuality, innovation, and growth. But what's happened now with social media presence is driving conversations towards media clicks, more likes, followers, that it could actually potentially lose its soul, where the culture in itself starts fading away. So my advice, and I've given this advice to plenty over the years, and whether they listen or not, I'll leave it up to them, but most have followed, is to ask impactful questions to yourself. Questions that really matter. One, why are you building the car? Number two, the purpose and how it represents you. 3, is it just for clicks? And 4, in 10 or 15 years, will you still look at this car and be proud of it? Answering those questions gives your build depth. You know, it's more meaningful to you guys. And that's my basic advice for it, because, you know, social media trends come and go, you know, and back then conversations and people gathering and talking about them, those last. That's my
Yeah. And seeing builds like these in person, I mean, RJ, what advice would you give to younger enthusiasts who are drawn to 90s JDM era and Mugen's legacy, right? Me being young, you know, I don't have access or the funds to pay high value price for some of these parts, you know. Unfortunately, you know, it's a great brand. I love it. I wish I could have it, but it's inaccessible to me. What advice would you give, you know, based off of, you know, people having less access to those parts today? And how do they honor that style without losing practicality or safety?
Wow, making me think too.
There's a lot. There's a lot in that one. There's a lot to unpack there.
Unfold that.
Well, let me challenge you first in terms of inaccessibility. A lot of times, I think when you're young, you want to rush. And so you buy the thing that you can afford in that moment, when if you would have just saved a little bit longer, you could have got what you really wanted, instead of buying the thing that you really didn't want, that didn't work out, and then working that much harder to get what you really want. So I would say that's one of the first things to anyone that's looking to do things, is not to rush, because, you know, you get what you pay for at the end of the day. I think most of us know that when something's really high quality and it really does, it costs more and it really is high quality, it's worth it. So sometimes it's just having that patience. Now, in terms of honoring kind of a look and a style, I mean, luckily there are so many avenues to learn from now, much more than before. And people are scanning old catalogs and whatnot. So I think it's actually easier to find information than it's ever been. And the way, you know, in terms of honoring it, it definitely depends on the era, right? And what decade, because some things are a lot harder to do if it's, let's say, the 80s. Versus stuff in the 90s or 2000s. So, you know, I agree with Junior. You just got to ask yourself those hard questions, you know, and then follow your own path, right? At the end of the day, it is easy to want to do things to get the likes and the clicks, but it shouldn't be about that, you know. And I know if you're part of a different generation, that may be a little bit tough, but as you get older, I think many of us realize, because I see that not everyone's young, that stuff don't matter at the end of the day, you know, and what matters is what you enjoy and what you love, and following that. You know, it's really cliche to say follow your passion, but when you're able to find it and align it to a skill that you develop and that you get good at, that's where like purpose starts to really manifest itself, right? So if the 90s thing is your thing, like embrace it, lean into it, do what you can, and, you know, meet people and learn what you can and make connections, because then those connections will get you sometimes the things that you want that are hard to find. So I think that would be my advice. Can't always do it, to your point, but I think if you stay patient and you stay focused on the things that you love and you really learn about it, you give it enough time, and it always kind of tends to work out.
You know, I want to piggyback on what RJ's just said. The very importance of building relationships. You know, acquiring these parts for this car didn't come overnight. It actually is an extension of those 4 decades of building relationships and the respect that I've given to individuals throughout the years. And in return, this has given me the respect. There's tons of parts on this car that even before acquiring any of it, it came in front of me because they wanted to see this car finished. So make sure that you build these relationships. And for us older folks, I'm not shy, and I do not shy away from giving advice or mentoring other people, and even telling them, hey, don't spend X amount of dollars on one part that you could turn around and buy 10 more other parts for it just for that attention to say you have that part. So you'd really need to ask yourself those questions that have depth, and continue to build these relationships, because these relationships will actually help you achieve your ultimate goal in building your car.
Yeah, and I want to add to that too. The cars are the cars, but they're the glue that bonds us all together, and that's the most important part of this whole thing is the personal relationships, figuring things out together. When you have a question, you ask your buddy, or you're up till the middle of the night, you can't get it to work, but somebody else that you just become friends with online, they have the answer, and now there's that connection. And that connection leads to another connection, that leads to another connection, and pretty soon you got a whole room full of people here, and this is just the glue that gets us here. And that's, you don't lose sight of the community, and that's what I think is the most important part.
And the community is the coolest part. To get people to come out, to look at cars, seeing people mingle, talk, laughing, having a good time. That's what it's really all about. And I'm glad we're able to capture that here tonight. I think that is what we work so hard for, and that's what the car community really is. But to kind of point something out, it's funny how we have the Prelude over there, and we have these 90s builds. Nice. Wow. Loud. It's funny enough that we have these 3 builds together. Obviously, as the automotive landscape evolves, the biggest question, I think, is for you, Scott. With electrification, modern tuning, and growing appreciation for heritage builds, what's next for King Motorsports and Mugen? Are there any upcoming projects, restorations, or collaborations enthusiasts should be excited about?
Well, there's a lot of things. So Mugen has always been what they would call a forward-facing company, which is they're always looking to the next thing. The heritage thing for them, it's not really part of their culture at Mugen. It's like an old part is an old part, but we're looking down the road. We want to build something better tomorrow. So for me to kind of introduce or plant the seeds for a heritage program, which I've been doing for the last 10 years plus, it's a hard lift, because they don't see this car. They don't see that car. It's non-existent in Japan. They're looking at new cars and what they can do with new cars. And in many cases, the stuff that made these cars, molds and drawings, they don't exist anymore, because there's a space consideration there. If you're not using it, it gets thrown in the dumpster, believe it or not. But we are slowly trying to turn that around and kind of connect people at Mugen who are now in different departments in different places who are part of this, to say, hey, do you remember how you did that, or where you got this, or where you did that, and can we do that again? And kind of maybe the worst kept secret is the B-series valve cover that we're working on, and we've been working on this thing for 5-6 years now. They've had my own valve cover there, and they're like, yeah, we know we want to do it. And I'm like, we really need it, because the prices on these things are getting stupid, and it's just dumb. And we want to get these people out there with this valve cover. And finally, last month, we got this valve cover to the original manufacturer, who said, yes, we can do this. I found the guy who's got the original drawings. They were in the back of his desk. It took a little bit of karaoke night to get this whole thing together, and way too many beers and whiskeys, but it came together. And I think we'll see this thing within the next 2 years. It's going to be better than the original one, which was a little leaky because the groove was cut too deep, and there was not enough crush on the gasket. But that's just an example. It just takes some time, because you're turning around. This ship is moving, and you got to turn it around, and it doesn't move fast, but it's moving now. So there's going to be more and more, because this golden era stuff is where people are. That's where people live now. And what the future is for Mugen with electrification, I don't know. This Type R that we have right now is going to be the last of its breed. The next Type R is going to be different. People may not like it, but it's going to be different, and that's progress. Maybe people don't think it's progress, but that's the way it is. So we really have to work on the stuff that we have here and celebrate how great we've got it right now. We've got some fantastic platforms with the FK8 and FL5. Prelude's going to be something to look at in the future. Mugen's already got a body kit now for it, and we're working on performance dampers, and those are going to be all available next spring. So the time is now. I don't know what the future is, but the time is now. If you're going to build something, build it.
Scott just made me want to buy a B or B-series something. He's got valve covers coming?
Got a valve cover, yeah.
And he just mentioned that those of you who have that valve cover, it's defective.
You can't charge that much for it.
Junior needs one.
Yeah, I need one. Anyone want to sell it for since it's defective?
Ladies and gentlemen, give a round of applause for these three gentlemen up here. Thank you for their time and their knowledge and sharing their awesome stories.
Thank you, everyone.
It is truly inspiring as someone of the younger generation to sit up here with these guys and what they do. And please give a big round of applause to Scott Zellner from King Motorsports for coming out here and showing love. Scott, and getting to know him, he works extremely hard to keep the U.S. market alive. He is a big reason why we're all here today. So thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, the dog cover is coming on. It is coming.